Okay, thank you for introducing. Let me share my screen. Okay, and now we can start. Okay, let's move it out. Sorry, some problem. Okay, today I want to share with you my experience, how I start working with Great Expectations and how we at the end implemented integration using Great Expectation actions for open data discovery. Open data discovery is a data platform which provides some useful feature for everyone who work with data, some feature like observability, data lineage, and so forth, so on. But today we are going to concentrate on data trust feature. And for that feature, by my colleague recommendation, we decided to start writing integration for Great Expectations. And firstly, I want to say that I am not a data QA engineer. I'm in charge of writing integration with external systems. And I decided, before writing that integration, I decided to do it in a way. I decided to get known closer how Great Expectation works under the hood and how our possible users will use our integration, take a look at their workflow. And I decided to start from documentation, and I went through all 4 steps. First steps for me was a setup. Here I have 2 options. I called git clone GX tutorials. It already has some already implemented projects, but I decided to start from scratch, just download Great Expectation and create empty project. Next part, it was decided what data we want to connect and how we can it connect. For simplicity, I decided to start with a file system, and there was 2 options. Probably I could use yellow chip data because the next article from documentation, they often refer to that data sample, but I decided to use my sample that I use for my integration. And next part was creating expectations, because I use CLI tool for me, and that CLI tool provides 3 ways how we can create expectations, but I was too lazy to create it manually, and I decided to do it in interactive way. And from that automatically created Jupyter notebook, I got some information how I can work with config files, how I can create expectation, how I can add them to the suite and store them. And the last step was how I can validate, how I can run that expectation against my data. And for me, there was no hesitation because I use the latest version. For me, there was one option to use checkpoint. After that, I got my demo project. Let's quickly look at that. Here I have my bank insurance data, Great Expectation product with YAML config, where I connected my data folder using infinite assert file system data connector, some expectations, and checkpoint. I think we can try to run it. Not set checkpoint, but succeed checkpoint. Okay, here we go. Now I had completed my first Great Expectation project, but what about integration part? If we decided to create that integration without actions, it could probably looks like that. Architecture would look like that. For example, we could store results to some cloud, for example, in S3, and write service which parse that results and map them and ingest that information to OpenDataDiscovery. That approach has some pros and cons, and to pros, I would add that when we have service like that, we can control what and when we parse. For example, we can run that service by cron or by scheduler, and we can add some filterware or cachedware. And because we communicate through that storage, our environment where Great Expectation used and where is OpenDataDiscovery. They're separated and they might don't know about each other at all. But same way that additional layer have some problems that we need to think who will support that storage and does it work or not. And data model. Data model here is a problem for developers, for someone like me, because if I not so familiar with Great Expectations, I would just can download the results JSON files. And when I start working with them, I will have a problem because I need to guess what does that field and is it optional or not, and so on. I think that approach can be implemented on only when client already implemented the storage. But we decided that we do not want to push our clients to think not only about how they validate data, and same time they must think about they need to store that results to some storage. It isn't good. And this is where Great Expectation Actions came to the scene. From documentation, I got that is just a Python class. We can treat it like a callback, which will be run by Great Expectation during runtime with validation results. It is a way of already implemented action, like an email notifier or Slack notifier, but because we need to create integration for ODD, we need to create our custom action. And what is custom action? It is just a plain Python class we derived from validation action with overridden run method. And now let's take a look a little bit at their params, which that run has, and what kind of information we can extract from that params and map to our own structure. For example, from expectations with validation result, we can get test result and test config. From the identifier, by the identifier, we can identify if that solution was a cloud solution or open source solution, but I haven't used it yet. From data set, it has which is instance of validator class, we can extract names or links to the files. We can extract the name of our target data. Next to params I haven't used, they're optional, and what is interesting is the quarks. As I found that quarks can have a payload object, and that payload object, that means that every action in the chain of action list, they can add some useful and additional information about their execution to that payload. We can treat it as a context. And from that payload, we can, for example, from update data docs action, we can extract links to the automatically generated HTML files. And probably we can show that links to the user, for example, if they got used to work with that files. Okay, now we know what is action and what we need to do to write our first action, and it's time for live coding. What's could go wrong during live coding? But before that, I want to say about my development process a little bit. Let's imagine that we already created our first brand new action, and we published it to the Conda or PyP, never mind. And our users how they will use it. They probably will pip install our project, but for demo purposes and for development purposes, we can run command. Let me maybe increase my size. Okay. We can use that command with eflag. That means we want to install package from local folder, and we will treat it as editable, and everything what I will change in that package will affect will have effect on that environment. Okay, I have prepared one new model, and we can start write our new action. For example, okay, let's increase. Okay. For example, let's imagine a GX meetup action, and as we know, now we need to derive it from validation class and override and run method. And let's add some message to the console. For example, hey. And now we are ready to use our action inside our checkpoint. Let me copy it. It will be useful. For that, your users just need to add new action to action list. Its name, no, GX meetup, create an action. We need to specify model by that field. Great expectation will find our package and our model, and will trigger our class. It named meetup, and class name was GX meetup action. And now, okay, let's return it. And now if I run it, we will catch an error. Let's try. Okay, got it. I don't know is a bug or is a feature, but we got unexpected keyword. And if we will go to the validation action source code, here we can find that run method has quarks, and it proxies the params to the underscore run method, but that run method doesn't receive that param. Okay, thanks for Python. We can easily fix it. Let's add that. And now here we go. I hope it's okay. Yeah, we are okay. Next, what if we want to add some configuration to our custom action? What we want to add some fields, for example, how it works for update data docs action. For example, we want to set a message. I don't know. Again, use it. Okay, meetup. And how it will affect on our action. To cover that feature, it's a piece of cake. We can just rewrite init method. Here we need to add data context and our new param. And if we rewrite init method, we mustn't forget to call the super method on the parent class. In proxy our data context, let's store that message some field and use that message inside our business logic. Okay, here we go. Now we can run it again. Okay, yeah, hurrah, we are good. And I think that's a minimum knowledge which you can use to start writing your action, and you can add more business logic here. And let's take a look how we did it for OpenDataDiscovery. Firstly, as I said, we want to extract target batch names. And for that purposes, we used validator class that encapsulates information about data connector, about expectations, what we want to validate, how we want to validate it. And that validator class has execution engine. And by that execution engine, we can infer, for example, if that execution engine is instance of pandas execution engine, we can guess that we work with local files. And by that information, we can, for example, extract a path to the local file. And if it is an SQL Alchemy execution engine, we can guess that we work with some database. And we can, for example, get information about where the database service is hosted, target database, target schema, target tables. Okay, let's return to the action. we got that data sets. And as I said, from payload, we can extract some additional useful information. That function check if before our action updated that Datadog action was executed, we can instruct that links to that HTML file and show it to the end user. And what is more interesting, how we passed expectation result. Expectation result suite, it is aggregation of expectation validation result. And we just go through them and map them. For each expectation result, we extract config because at ODD, we treat config as a separated entity. And because we treat it as a separated entity, we need to create unique name for that. But how we can do it? When users write their first expectation suite, we can see that there we can have same name for expectation, but they're different in their quarks. But how we get now which arguments each expectation receives, which is required by each expectations. And using that function, it provides functionality that by expectation name, we can get expectation class. And from that expectation class, we can take arguments name. And if we use it, we can concatenate that information from expectation class with information that user provides in the configuration file and create some unique name. Okay, we got map config, we map it, and now we need to parse a status. Getting a status was a straightforward, with one more point that I want to notice. Is it failed or is it what success we can get by that build? But where I start for a moment, because when I start working with GX and I open that generate HTML files, I have seen that message that that value not in list. And I thought I can find that information inside expectation validation result, but I didn't find it. And after spending some time reading source code, let me open the expectation core, I found an example where, like that. Yeah. From that example, I got that if something failed, we can extract that information from the result object by that key. And we decided to use that information, but I'm not sure does it work for all expectations, but we decided for start leave it at ease and just show that message that some values are failed. And I think that's all. We map it config, we map it to result. We can continue them to the array, ingest the data to the platform, and we can show to our users that we are good and your metadata was ingested to platform. And probably it is optional for us, we can add some additional information to the payload. Now we can run, I have prepared the checkpoint, which uses our ODD action, and we can try to run it. I hope it will be okay. Run, failed. Yeah, here we go. It's failed because I have some failed data. And now if we go to OpenDataDiscovery, we can see that we have uploaded data to our platform. Yeah, we are good. And when we implemented our action, architecture changed a little bit. And for end user, it looks like Great Expectation directly sends data to the ODD, but under the hood, it uses our action. That's way, for me, it has some pros, like because we are working with APIs that developers prepare for us, we write our code by contract, we can be sure that our code will work inside GX ecosystem. And using GX models, it is a reference to all this problem. Now we can work with classes, we can run method on them, we can get a property, for example. And next, I would add an instant reaction. That means every time when users run test validation, or for example, Airflow using great expression operator run our tested, that information will be mapped and stored at OpenDataDiscovery platform. And for cons, I would add that we can writing action, we can affect on user experience. We must be attentive writing that action because, for example, we can, if we wrote our action in an effective way, we can freeze their terminal, or we can pollute their std out log or std error log, as I did for the first steps. But as my colleague says, just write good code and don't write bad code, I think is a great piece of advice. Yeah, and it's the end of my presentation, but it isn't end for us because we are going to add some new features. As an example, I want to test how it works with a cloud solution. And at the end, I wanted to say my thanks and kudos for everyone who created that product, because for someone like me who works with, who write integration, it is really important to have user-friendly documentation and well-defined an API. Yes, it was really pleasure to write that integration. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Pavel. That was awesome. And a little cliffhanger too. We'll see what comes out, what comes out next for this project.
Huh?
We'll see what comes out next for this project. You said you're gonna do more stuff, so we'll stay tuned.
What do you mean by that?
Oh no, you said you're gonna end up doing more. You're gonna add more features, right?
Yes, add more features. I mean that because now, if we take a look, for example, for SQL Alchemy, now we support, because we decided to do it in iterative way. We decided just for the first step to add Postgres dataset, and after I created a video about that integration, our colleagues start using Snowflake in ecosystem like Airflows and data that's stored at Snowflake, and it was okay, but she got some problem. For example, sometimes some data source can surprise you. For example, Snowflake can use the database name concatenated with schema name. And there is a place, yeah, there is a violated little bit open source principle, because with new data sources, we need to go to that file and add and change it. But we decided to do it that way, and I'm going to create new integration with another databases. And I want to try to connect my data with S3 and add a cloud solution.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we look forward to that. Yeah, keep us updated on your progress.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Pavel. All right. We have one more presentation. Ruben from our DevRel team, Senior Developer Advocate. I'm going to present on AWS, part 1. So Ruben, you could take it away.
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure that, all right. Hey, everyone. So yeah, my name is Ruben Reduce. I'm a senior developer advocate for Great Expectations. And today I'm going to be talking to you and walking you through part 1 of a 2-part series. We hope that the second part will be done by next month for the next month meeting. I'm going to be talking you through about how to validate and document your data in AWS S3. This is a very common use case. And in order to do that, we're going to be using a new type of guides that we put out there. They are very comprehensive and end-to-end. And by end-to-end, I'm meaning it goes from the very basics of setting your software underpinnings and all the dependencies all the way through the end, which is when you can actually validate your data and document that data. These paths have been validated by us or vetted by us, and each of them specifying a specific use case. We're working on more additional ones, but for now we focused the first initial effort on AWS, the different services in AWS. You can see them right now if you go to our doc site. It's going to be on the left navigation bar. You're going to find integration guides, and underneath that, you're going to find another menu called Using Great Expectations with AWS. Here's where all these guides will be. For this, I'm going to be using Great Expectations with Pandas S3. For the sake of brevity and time, we need to make some assumptions for this. We're going to assume that you already gone through the first part of that guide, which is going to be setting up your Python versions, the correct Python versions, the pip, AWS CLIs, etc. We're also going to assume that you have access, read access to at least one bucket in AWS where you're going to be storing or retrieving data from. And then obviously, you're going to be needing a bucket where you have all of the data that you actually want to analyze. The objectives of this short demo that I'm doing today is basically I want to set you up so that way by the end of it, you'll be at a good stopping point for part 2. And then I hope to help you so that you can see how to set up a validation store, an expectation store, and then a Datadocs website. All right. For that, I need to move. I would like to share. I'm going to have to share here 2 different things. Okay. I need to share my command. Well, I'm going to share the whole desktop because otherwise it's just going to be confusing. All right. All right. So as you can see, so like I'm already in a command line, and then, well, before I jump into that, sorry, I'm going to show you the guys that I'm going to be walking through walk you through. And then as you can say, right, like we have here the prerequisites just to run this particular thing where we go through all the setup steps. And then we make sure that you have the correct versions, that you have the Python virtual envs and all those, to make sure that you have the correct credentials for AWS, etc. So before we even get started, we walk you through all those steps to make sure that you are correctly set up. All right. So the first thing is going to be creating what we call a data context in Great Expectations. This is sort of like a project level view of all of our the things that we need to run validations. And the first thing is just going to be running that command that we're told on the